Hello and welcome back to Spekd. After the whole Indomitus debacle and me repairing my laptop, I took some time out to get back into painting again, and in that time I almost totally eliminated my pile of shame. I am officially the destroyer of grey plastics and it feels so good. Once I was done, I focused on fine details of older painted models, going back and applying new techniques that I've learned over the year, from adding layer effects and textures just to bring them back into a more up-to-date painting style to match my current models. All the while watching 40k 9th edition battle reports, just trying to really understand the new victory mechanics of the game, thinking about how I'll expand my conquest army, and trust me, conquest heads are going to do really well in this edition, but that's for another video. 9th edition has really changed the style of play, and if you're not familiar with competitive play, you're in for a treat, but don't worry, I don't think you're alone in that, because most of us are not used to that style of play anyway. This type of scoring system, I believe, will give you less feel badsies. You know, when you lose a lot of games, you feel bad and you don't want to play anymore. I think it helps eliminate that. But let's get on to the reason why you're here in the first place. In the last few weeks, there's been a whole heap of news, including FAQs and Terminators gaining extra wound. Now, this might seem familiar because back in May 2019, we discussed that a Terminator should have always had an extra wound. What I didn't take into account was the effect that that single wound will have in game, and it will be more dramatic than you think. And I've thrown some dice at it, and trust me, you're going to want to see that. But the thing that's really baffling a lot of people, and intrigues me the most, is that Space Marine veterans now have 2 wounds. Now, this has upset a few people, as their Primaris cousins only have 2 wounds, and therefore Primaris are pointless, and they should instantly be upgraded to 3 wounds. After all, they're meant to be bigger, tougher, faster, stronger, and all of that jazz. And they think that alone should qualify them for that extra wound, right? Well, I simply say no, it's complicated. I actually say 2 wound veterans are correct and 2 wound Primaris intercessors are correct, not 3 wounds. And I'll take the time to go through my thought process on this one. So grab some tea and biscuit and let's get with it. 2 wounds, this time veterans could withstand the pew-pew-pews of las guns, and it will not just take them out in one shot. This sounds more like the lore that we're accustomed to reading. The interesting thing is here, I don't think this is just based on the lore, which is why they made this change. Clearly I think it's something else. I say the way we tackle this is by asking a question. And if we start with that age-old question, does size really matter? When you actually look at the stats between the classic Marines and the upgraded Primaris Marines, it's actually pretty even across the board. The big difference is what I call the Primaris template buff, PTB, +1 attack and +1 wound. If we make the comparison of the tactical Marines to Primaris Marines, they come up a little bit short. And if we then take an established character that's been through the Rubicon process, say like Mephiston from the Blood Angels Book of Baal, and compare him to his original stats before the events from the Blood Angels Codex, you could see he gains that PTB bonus, the +1 attack and 1 extra wound. And now, when you're measuring up the standard tactical Marine to Primaris intercessors, nothing else changes. So in this case, right away, we can see that bigger is better in this case. The tacticals just don't measure up. On to where I think things change, and I believe that there should be a difference. I'm talking about the grizzled Wolverines of the 40k universe. I'm talking about the Sternguard veterans. Right now, I just want to point out that even to survive and become a veteran in the Grimdark universe is an incredible feat on its own. When I say veterans, I don't only mean the warriors of the Imperium, I'm talking also about the veterans found on the side of Chaos, the heretical Astartes. So let's compare. And in particular, the physical capabilities of the Blood Angels Sternguard veterans and the Primaris intercessors. It's the old boys versus the new kids on the block. They both have a move of 6, so much for the Primaris being bigger and faster. Weapon skill and ballistic skill of 3, so those hundreds of years of combat experience don't really seem to pay off for the vets here, or are they just slowing down with age? Anyway, strength and toughness of 4, well, they're just as strong on the resistance of having things drop on their head from the height and can do equal amount of press-ups. The attacks are the same as 2 and 3 for the Sergeant respectively, because, you know, let's face it, they all know how to throw some hands. Next, we want to look at the wounds of the Primaris, and that's 2, and the vets is 1, and that takes care of all the actual physicality of both Space Marines and the Primaris Space Marines. The armor save is just that. It's the quality of the armor they're wearing and the amount of physical resistance it provides, and that's known as a Marine save of 3+. Now, you might be led to think that this is the key of all this is hinted in the leadership. First, the vets come in at 9 and the new boys are 8, and clearly the vets have earned everyone's respect. But what is the leadership stat really? Is it really just a representation of a rank? Or is it a reason to give a Marine an extra wound? Well, I don't think it is. But look, when we look at the dictionary, the actual definition is as follows. Leadership is actually the action of leading a group of people or an organization. That's it, clear and simple. Right away, I can already hear you screaming at me. But what about the Primaris Ancient or the Primaris Lieutenants that have high leadership levels? They got more wounds. Just look at the new Primaris Captain. Okay, look, it's worth pointing out that although this is a valid viewpoint, but if that was true, would the intercessors not start out with a leadership score equal to the veterans, thereby giving them a bonus wound? It doesn't mean that because you have a higher leadership, you should automatically have more wounds. If this was the case, the Primaris intercessors would automatically have a higher leadership level to match the veterans, but they don't. Okay then, leadership has nothing to do with that extra wound. Even in the previous examples, when it comes to Primaris captains and lieutenants, we're not too sure the exact point in their battle history that they decided to switch from that classic standard Marine and selected to go through the Rubicon process to become a Primaris. What we know is that the intercessors are new recruits. They're fresh, they have no experience, and I believe that's the key. It's all about experience, as the process changes their bodies but does not alter their minds, and that leaves them with their life experience intact. They keep their respective battle memories, and that's why I believe veterans and those with lots of experience in the 40k universe have the extra wounds. Okay, let's play the dictionary game again and play bookworm, but when we look at the word experience, it points at practical contact and observation of facts or events. That was kind of short, but it is what it is. To speed things up and make a few quick jumps here, you can observe facts and events, you learn patterns, and then you put them into practice and you gain a skill. Be it a simple skill from walking to driving a car, or maybe something more complex like painting. Astartes minds are everything tactical, and will be told in some occasions photographic too. Those patterns become repetitive and refined. It becomes a skill. A skill is something where you can have or show the knowledge, ability, or training to perform certain actions or activity or task well. To do that activity well, you must have a high level of success. Now that's going to make up for part of the experience. One of the tasks veterans clearly have is the ability to avoid having Xenos and heretics Astarte weapons fire in their face. And just so you know, these guys fight and survive for centuries. It becomes almost instinctive. So we're going from an experience to a skill to a high level skill to instinctive ability. So, you know that buddy of yours that you're always playing pranks on, and sometimes he gets like all General Akbar and figures out that somehow you have some sort of elaborate trap for them in their most comfy chair just before they decide to sit down. They check it and you wonder like, how do they know it was a trap? And that response is known as reaction. And in some cases, even before they know what the danger is, it's kind of like having a spider sense or PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome, because some of those symptoms, known as the exaggerated startle response, can cause a fight or flight response. It's an automatic physiological reaction to an event that's perceived as stressful or frightening. The perception of threat activates the sympathetic nervous system and triggers an acute stress response that prepares the body to fight or flee. Now, as we know, Space Marines know no fear, so I'm sure they're going to end up at the fighting end of that spectrum. By the way, I'm no doctor or psychologist, I'm just putting together the small pieces. When we look up survival instinct in the dictionary, it gives us this definition: the instinct in humans and animals to do things in a dangerous situation that will prevent them from dying. Yeah, okay, that's one of the main things the veterans have shown, is the ability to survive in extremely hostile situations. This survival instinct, the ability to roll with punches, has come from their past experiences in battle. You can reduce the impact, you can reduce the damage, and therefore it increases your chance of survival in battle. And I believe their collective experience is the reason alone that makes up for that extra wound. And this is why the veterans now have one extra wound and the Primaris intercessors do not. The survivability is truly what counts in the 40k universe. And I believe this also justifies why Dante, the chapter master of the Blood Angels, Ninth Legion, has the same body of a Space Marine, but also many more wounds. He has survived over 1,000 years of combat and gained all of that XP. Maybe they should change wounds characteristic to survivability. The real question for me is, will they give Primaris veterans an extra wound? But that's to figure out another time. This has been Spekd, and as always, I've enjoyed my time and happy to hear from you guys again. I want to say a big thank you for the people on Discord and sending me emails, keeping contact whilst my PC was on fire. I do appreciate it, and I hope you've enjoyed your time. And as always, PC out.